this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose.
If you have good internal controls and those good processes, then you have more comfort that the financial data you have is reliable at any point in time, not just at a specific date of the financial statements.
Dawn Simpson of the GAO on FedGov Today in just a moment. First, though, Coast Guard leaders are preparing for more ships and more activity in the Arctic. You'll learn about that and meet some of those leaders on FedGov Today TV this Sunday morning at 10:30 on ABC7 in Washington and the FedGov Today YouTube channel. And you can watch every FedGov Today TV show on demand at fedgovtoday.com. The Internal Revenue Service is making progress on closing gaps in its financial management. Half of the problems the Government Accountability Office found in 2023, the IRS fixed in 2024. Dawn Simpson's Director of Financial Management and Assurance at GAO. Dawn, welcome. I read IRS made significant progress during fiscal year 2024 in addressing prior deficiencies and resolved the significant deficiency in information systems controls we noted in 2023. Tell me about that before you get to what you find for this year. What did IRS have as far as an issue, and how did they go about addressing it? Welcome, Dawn.
Thank you, Francis. Glad to be here. We are doing our work as related to our audit of IRS's financial statements. And so we are focused specifically on those controls that are necessary in the financial reporting process, to have the controls necessary to have reliable financial information. And part of those controls are information system controls from the systems, and then other controls are what we would call manual controls. And so on the information systems side, IRS has been making progress in addressing our prior year findings in that area. And this past year in 2024, they continue to make progress in addressing several of our recommendations. 21 prior year recommendations in the information system area were IRS implemented corrective actions that effectively resolved those deficiencies. And so as part of our audit, we take a look at the deficiencies that are remaining, both from prior year and then what we find in the current year. And we analyze those and determine, in aggregate, where the agency is. And as a result of that analysis, we determined that the significant deficiency that we had in prior years, which means, it's deficiencies that really need a little bit more of attention by what we call those charged with governance. But that's kind of above management, making the necessary people aware that this is an issue that needs to be focused on. But what we found in 2024 is the progress that IRS made, and then the new deficiencies that we had found that really that additional focus or awareness by others was not needed at this point. And so IRS, we did not report a significant deficiency related to IRS's information system controls for fiscal year 24.
What was that significant deficiency, and how did they go about successfully addressing it that it was no longer necessary to report on?
So in the information systems area, for the controls that relate to financial reporting, these can be in 5 different categories by the work that we do. And from IRS's perspective, our prior year findings really focused in on 2 specific areas, and that relates to access controls, where it's making sure that they have the controls to prevent or detect unauthorized access, as well as in the configuration management area, which is really the settings and changes to making sure your systems are operating securely. And those are really the 2 areas that where IRS continued last year in 24 to make improvements and address deficiencies in those areas. That, like I said, that the remaining deficiencies in those areas do not rise to that level of a significant deficiency.
That certainly sounds like a good news story. I read GAO identified 5 new deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting, 4 related to information systems and are sensitive in nature, 1 related to property and equipment transaction cycle and is non-sensitive. Is that cadence for identifying new deficiencies while resolving old ones, is that kind of normal in the course of the work that you do, not just at IRS necessarily, but other agencies? Is this something where there is this level of turnover on an ongoing basis, or is that an anomaly that while they fix some things, other things have surfaced?
That is normal across, the audits that I am familiar with. You will see certain things get addressed, but then you'll also identify some new things as well. What IRS has been focused on and why they were able to move and not have a significant deficiency is the number that they were able to address, and the new findings were, as you just read there were 4 new findings in the information systems area, which, was a smaller number. And because, as an auditor, we're looking across the board, both what is continuing from prior years as well as new issues and the significance of those issues, and putting that all together. And IRS not only resolved many prior year deficiencies, but they also didn't have very many new ones that were identified. And taking and just a lot of different things into context is then how we can determine our conclusions related to the overall effect of the deficiencies.
What do we learn from the recommendation that you're making there that should or could potentially apply to the way that IRS responds to not just this open item, but to other open items that it has? Are there any common themes among all of the things that still remain for IRS to address?
So monitoring is an important aspect to internal control. And especially as agencies continue to improve their internal controls, monitoring of those internal controls to ensure they continue to do what management thinks they're doing is very important just in the whole internal control environment. So the recommendation that we made in the public version specifically relates to more manual control. So it's not related to the information system deficiencies that we have, but we had one finding related to more of a manual reconciliation. And this really went towards monitoring that from the people that are preparing the financial statements, and they're using data from systems to prepare their financial statements. They need to be comfortable that the data they're getting from the system is what they expect that data to be. And this was a case where the depreciation that was being calculated by the system wasn't following the policies that IRS intended, and they did not have a process to kind of identify that issue. We identified that as part of our testing and asked questions about it, and really our recommendation is that monitoring process from IRS so that they are comfortable that the data they're going to use for their financial statements is what they are expecting it to be.
Yeah, you kind of anticipated my next question, which is, are people becoming, and are you becoming more confident, less confident, or neutral in the data that the IRS has and the ability about which to make decisions with it?
IRS has had a clean opinion on their financial statements for many years. I mean, they continue to be able to demonstrate that they have the processes and procedures that are needed to prepare reliable financial information. And that has continued. And then where we're seeing that makes the data more reliable from a point of view of at any point in time, that's kind of where you get into the internal controls. And if you have good internal controls and those good processes, then you have more comfort that the financial data you have is reliable at any point in time, not just at a specific date of the financial statements. And so that's from where we really look at in depth at internal controls, because of the importance of making sure your financial data could be used, at any point in time during the year. And so that's why, seeing the improvements by IRS on their internal controls is moving in the right direction as far as the overall posture of their data.
Dawn, I read that you will plan to follow up on the corrective actions taken on the recommendations as part of your audits of IRS's fiscal year 2025 financial statements and its internal control over financial reporting as of September 30th, 2025. That's part of the annual work that you undertake to do this. What specifically will you be looking at? Is it as straightforward as you made the recommendation that we just described and they implemented that recommendation and closed it, or is there more to what you will examine than that regarding this one at least?
It specifically relates to all of our open recommendations related to the financial statement audit. We do look at the corrective actions that IRS is taking, and it's both from the design of those corrective actions. If they are implemented effectively, will that corrective action solve or address the recommendation that we're making? Because sometimes the design won't necessarily get the agency all the way to fixing the problem. And depending where the agency is in their implementation, design is the first step. And sometimes we can go ahead and comment on design. And then the next step is implementation. And so we evaluate, you designed this. Did you actually effectively implement it? And is it operating effectively? And so we will look at all aspects of that, of the corrective actions that are taken on the open recommendations to make a decision for fiscal year 25 as to whether that issue has been resolved or not.
Dawn, it's great to talk to you as always. Congratulations on this work, and thank you for telling me about it today.
Thank you for having me.
You can find a link to Dawn's work on financial management at the IRS on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Your agency's customer experience modernization effort shouldn't be all digital. You'll learn why and learn how to modernize one of the oldest customer interactions at the Contact Center Summit coming April 30th at the Carasoft Conference and Collaboration Center in Reston, Virginia. Government and industry leaders will show you how AI and data can make your job and your customers' experience better. You can read more about the event and register at fedgovtoday.com/events. The Defense Department has some close partners in building its next-generation cyber workforce. You'll learn about them on the next FedGov Today podcast. That's coming Thursday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your shows. And you can listen to all of our podcasts on demand at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. Thanks very much for listening.